Yes, that I started in 2012, practically, right? And so in 2013, I performed the first episode, Sujeto Transnacional, as part of my documents by Lola Arias, the series that you might know, have heard about, that is sort of like documentary theater, biodrama. So it's a telling of a story that I was the protagonist. And the second part was about my mom's stroke, and that part remains just a reading. It's called The Body as a Catastrophe, Sujeto Transnacional, and this is Sujeto Transnacional 3, The Invisible Wall, okay? And so, and before, and I started writing about it and conceptualizing it in 2020, before the pandemic, and it was going to be for a part of a conference called Crisis of Care. The theme of the Performance Studies International Conference that never happened because of COVID, and that's where I started, so 2020. So as I transition out of my DGS role, out of leadership, and I start thinking, what is to be back to being a person and an artist and a scholar, right? Somebody naughty that tries things and risks it, and plays with her students as well. You know, some people were like less control, more play. So I'm joining you there, and so this is gonna last 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I'm gonna do my best to keep it short, and that is why I had to edit out 2 tracks that are very important in the piece. One is about Trump's helicopters press conference, press conferences that he gave with helicopter sound. And the second piece that I edited out is about the minors, the unaccompanied minors who had to testify in court, 3-year-olds. So that's not going to be part of this particular performance, but my goal is next year to do like a production with sound and other artists, and add those 2. So here notice, okay, so because this is a shared story, some of you might have experienced some of the 2 major pressure points that I address in the piece, so emotions might be stirred up, so please take care of yourself, replenish your glasses. I don't mind if you move, just don't mess up with the camera, okay? And then if you can, please stay for the conversation. And I want to thank, before I start, I want to thank Camila Simonin, who assisted me with production. Jana Carter, who took care of the tech at last minute, really. And Johanna Middleton, who also helped me in regards today as well. So lastly, I want to dedicate this to Malu Machuca Rosé, who is currently in Peru, Natalia Molevazzi, Ali Farage, Gervais Marsh, Alicia Núñez, and Jorge Sanchez Cruz. Okay. Great. Yes. Okay, I'll start. Do you want a chronology or images? A suitcase. Because they want me to leave, that is to return. I carry a suitcase with all my tax returns. My suitcase also holds a dream. I once dreamed that all the suitcases I carried, the ones with wheels, had a life of their own. They were leaving my side, one by one, sliding off, self-transported, errantes. It was an airport dream, a recurrent genre, one of many in the series of dreams that haunt me. Like performance dreams, where I don't know the script, or teaching dreams, where I find myself in front of a class and I don't know what to say, and there's no syllabus to follow. PTSD ripple effect from the times I did know the subject, but that didn't matter. Los Angeles, July 14th, 2018. I send a WhatsApp message to my friends Angeles and Cesar to share my dream with them. Angeles and Cesar are my Chilean friends who live in New York. At that time, they are working on an event, a sanctuary project with Reverend Billy, the satirical performer. They are planning an event called Deportee Suitcase March. The action brings to light one of the invisible layers of the so-called deportation machine. When someone is ordered to be deported, their loved ones are instructed to pack a suitcase not exceeding 25 pounds to be dropped at the ICE office. Drop the suitcase, no goodbyes. With the hashtag #WhatWouldYouPack, the organizers of the Deportee Suitcase March asked the public to put themselves in the shoes of a loved one that is suddenly confronted with the task of having to choose an object, pieces of clothing, personal photos, letters, and the like, and fit them in a carry-on suitcase to be dropped with no goodbyes. The dream. Airport or train station. People swim calmly, leisurely. There's a sort of a pier surrounded by water. I have 5 pieces of luggage with me and I'm by myself. The suitcase that contains my performance programs slides away, far away from me. I don't know where to find it. Where did it go? I look everywhere. I end up at the post office. Roberto Cifuentes, La Pocha Nostra's performer, is the postmaster. His office has performance souvenirs, lucha libre mask, Mexican artifacts. When I leave the office, I tell my partner, the theater suitcase got lost in the US. Later, I'm cleaning a theater building. Some of my students scream, what are you doing? My partner hires a Guatemalan migrant through a service called Home Joy. The first time I took an oath, American style, raise hand and all, we were 3. 3 women, 2 Latinas, the immigration officer and I, and my attorney. NB are her initials. She's an impressive woman, a tall brunette. One time, NB wore all green to our meeting. Yes, you heard it right. Bright green jacket and pants. When I saw her, I told her about the abortion rights movement in Argentina. Bright green is the color of the campaign for the right to free, legal, and safe abortion, La Campaña. NB already knew about the Mothers of Plaza de Mayo and women's movements in Latin America. She and her assistant, ES, had graduated from the same college. They probably took a Latin American Studies course. In one of our conversations, they shared their passion about Latin America with me. The first time we talked on the phone, NB told me about theater groups in Chicago who work with migrants and undocumented people. The Albany Park Theater Project, now I know. In NB's Twitter account, I was able to see that she herself is an advocate, an activist, not just a lawyer, but an active advocate. Even though the letters do not align to form the word care in activists, we are missing an R and an E. Care is the motor behind the acts that make a person call herself or be defined as an activist. Care. C-A-R-E. Do we really care when we care for people, the vulnerable, the marginalized, the disenfranchised? What makes us care? Why do we care when perhaps it's easier to not care, to protect ourselves, to play sálvese quien pueda, to go on self-preservation mode where we all get in our corner under the weight and speed of harm? When precarity and precariousness is what is more diffused and shared than resources, power, safety. Me and you turned into me or you. Is it food or am I food? Said a collaboration coach that the Hemispheric Institute hired to help board members work better as a real network. The coach said in that workshop that as human beings, we always meet each other with that mindset. Is it food or am I food? Did she say always? I don't recall right now. And so a suitcase. Me declaring under oath, being acculturated to the terrain of legal matters and its performances in the space I had been called to corroborate what I wrote on the form when I applied for LPR, that is, legal permanent residency. That was what the interview was about. A new requirement that was part of Trump's so-called invisible wall. I was ready to tell the other Latina, the UC's officer, after she made me take my first oath, what performance studies my field is about, what I do for a living. Elevator pitch. I had studied for it. I was prepared to make it all make sense to her. Performance studies for immigration officers. I had rehearsed a couple of times in airports and consular offices. I was then finishing my book, writing marketing blurbs for librarians and other possible users of my work. But that day, I was there to get interviewed, not about the book or the field, but about my application. I was there being evaluated at the precise time that I was being evaluated for tenure, after I had successfully completed the last round of manuscript reviews, 1 to 3, for my book to enter production. Can you accumulate more checkpoints than these? Move through more consequential stages than these? Or so they felt. My writing was being assessed, my value rated, my academic contributions weighted. I had it all lined up, marked in calendars, anticipated. I was told everything was gonna be okay. You'll see. I have no doubt. Hang in there. The day is near. The fat lady is still singing. But right there, in that interview at the UC's quarters in Chicago, one thing mattered more than any of my accomplishments. It weighed like 1,000,000 pounds. Where had I lived? Let me be more precise. The core of the matter for my green card application approval was, had I completed the 2-year home residency requirement mandated by the Fulbright Fellowship that I had been awarded more than 15 years prior to the interview to do my master's in performance studies at NYU. As Borges says, el porvenir es inevitable, preciso, pero puede no acontecer. So by the time I was trying to finally leave my visitor status after almost 2 decades of living in the US, what mattered the most was not what I had accomplished, as the tenure evaluation aimed to assess, but where had I lived. That is, in order to be able to live as a legal permanent resident in the United States, I had to prove that I had gone home to Argentina for a total of 2 years. The suitcase I had carried with me to that interview at UC Chicago in mid-2018 held, as mentioned, all my tax returns since 2001, and airfare tickets, passport stamps, and a list of trips to Argentina, 11 to be more precise, since 2011. I remember the printer. The officer had a printer. In that almost bare office, the printer had a magnified presence. It seemed as if the office and the officer had been hastily assembled to accommodate the proliferating interviews ordered by the new administration. We are learning to fly as they put together the airplane, said the university legal expert when my chair and I met with him to discuss my case. In my memory, the Latina officer's printer is overpowering. If I were to design a stage set for that scene, I would make the printer bigger, not just simply emphasized by light, but as a big, bulky, Kafkian thing. As if being animated by a life of its own, the printer spit out the note that the Latina officer then handed in to me. The officer moved timidly, as if she had just learned her script, as if she was painfully aware of her role as a surrogate, part and parcel, but also contingent bit in a system that was gathering steam, the forming eye of a storm that was going to rain on me and on so many others. Envy, my attorney who had accompanied me to the interview, had told me that when we ran a few lines to prepare, that the interview, a step recently added by the Trump administration, would simply be a formality. They'll let you know that you're approved that same afternoon or even at the interview itself. I don't anticipate any problems. Now I remember her hand, the movement of the officer's hand, like a magician surreptitiously sending the job to the printer after our final word exchange, after she had asked me to corroborate the last answer, probably a check mark in the form that I had completed at the start of the process. Then she put her fingers together to get the piece of paper out of the machine, to hand it in to me. She said, and the paper read, "At this time, I cannot make a determination. Do you have any questions?" NB stood quiet, but she didn't seem worried. I looked at her. "If in doubt, go with your gut. Be spontaneous." I asked her, "Should I have a question?" "We are flying the airplane, as they put it together. We are executing the performance as it's being written. A change of scenario. In those places and circumstances, you feel you need to exercise caution. La ciudad de los letrados, the letter city. What's the protocol? Como con la medicina, prestar el cuerpo." NB says goodbye. She exits with an aura of ensured success that I find disingenuous. She trusts that everything will turn out okay. She trusts what she knows. How wouldn't it be? Everything's lined up. How wouldn't it be, especially for someone who collected and packed 10 years of tax returns? I take the train home. Home is where I live. Marshfield, con Grace. ¿Cómo van? All good? That was June 19, 2018. And the decision about my green card didn't come that afternoon, nor that week or that month. It actually came 3 months later, and it wasn't what we had expected. September 9th, 2018, one of my happiest birthdays. We are in Indiana, in the Ogden Dunes to be more precise, right by the place where the main attraction, the monstrous Ogden Dunes ski jump, was enjoyed by athletes and enthusiasts alike from 1927 to 1932. This birthday marks the exceptional occasion when the transnational subjects closest to me, an Italian, a Puerto Rican, and a Mexican, were able to converge in time and space to celebrate my birth. We sing the happy birthday in 3 languages. I'm still waiting for my green card approval, but I remain hopeful. I anticipate a good year. I know it will definitely be a turning point. My tenure portfolio is under review, and my book manuscript is out to production. What can go wrong? Tenure, of course. A successful review is never guaranteed. The evaluation period is long and nerve-wracking. Long, slow-moving months when you don't know what's happening, who is taking issue with the nature or volume of your research output, or your external letters, or your teaching evaluations. From experts to 19-year-olds, everyone is your judge, almost at equal levels, power over you. But today, on my birthday, I'm just happy to get to enjoy it with my love and friends. It's a beautiful day at the dunes, the perfect landscape for this moment in my life. Going up sandy hills with a lot of effort, going down almost like losing control, laughing like a kid, and trying to not get engulfed by the amorphous mass of loose sand that seems determined to eat you up. You are here. We are getting serious, perhaps less precarious. That's the hope. To stop hoarding moving boxes just in case. My partner lives in LA. We have 2 homes. She owns, I rent. She's about to leave Chicago after her visit to celebrate my birthday. Her lift is on the way. While we wait, I decide to check the status of my application online. Perhaps I wanted her to leave with the good news. Perhaps I wanted us to share live the end of a long wait. I enter the case number. It's a denial. End of birthday joy. I go to the living room, or maybe I call her. Amor. I think she comes to the room because I remember pointing to the screen. I look at her from my chair. Cinematographic memory. She says, what would you like me to do? Do you want me to stay? I feel bad leaving you now. No, you should go. I want you to go. We are used to sacrifices. Somebody should write about the heartbreaks, but also about the stretched emotional range, the effective adjustments of these subjects and their families and lovers. Paradoxes. She and I live apart so that we can be together. My job is in Chicago, hers in LA, in the land of Silicon Beach that Wikipedia says is home to more than 500 tech companies. This will never be resolved. LA was not viable for me. The job presented itself in the Windy City. Windy because of turbulent politics, not because of atmospheric events, which there are too. And she hates the cold. She's a Mediterranean girl. Her lift arrives, and there she goes. I stay in a season of crying and listening to music as an intentional activity. Sometimes she texts, do you want to talk? I say, no, I'm crying and listening to music. Red couch, 2 cats, and a feeling that this could be my last year in the US, the last months of my feminist exile from before I was a feminist. I concern myself with practical questions like how to ship my books. I feel for the younger me that invested so much in this so-called straightforward process. How naive of me to think that there is an end to vulnerability, especially via capitalism. It's kind of tragic, I think, that just when things are so bad in Argentina, I'll have to go back. My friends who in the past asked me when I was planning to come back, cuando estaba lindo para volver, now tell me to think about it. Macri models after Trump in some departments. His administration mirrors ours. I don't know what these pronouns his, ours mean anymore, or how to use them. Macri has floated a proposal to jail migrants, a lucrative business for the businessman he is. Chile follows suit, the other transnationalization. In the US, undocumented migrants flee northbound. They lose limbs to inhumane weather conditions. In the Chilean desert, a woman dies. She's Dominican, walked in red high-heel shoes, matching purse. Her coyote probably told her that crossing the Atacama Desert on foot was a feasible plan. Doable distances. La tierra se lleva los cuerpos. MB doesn't cry, but she's shocked by the news of the application denial. The online note doesn't say why I was denied. So MB thinks that I might owe a couple of days here and there, 3 months tops, from my stuck 2-year home residency compliance. Sometimes federal and local authorities count time differently, she says during one of our phone calls. How do you do the counting when you don't know how the counting is done? Does the arrival date count? The departure? Next time you go to Argentina, maybe over Christmas, you'll get it done, MB assures me. The letter explaining the reason for the denial arrives shortly. It's a thick envelope. So around the time when I was finally able to deliver my book manuscript out to production, I felt like I was opening my hands to let it go. I had to come to terms with the fact that the book was not mine anymore. Now it was what it was, beyond my grasp. Even though publishing a book is probably one of the most intense and personal experiences that ever happened to me, and that is why it took so long to finish the damn thing, I had to open my hands and let it have a life of its own. Writing an academic book means crafting and weaving a series of arguments where you assert yourself against being right, as Peggy Phelan writes. But not really, because you're supposed to say something, to argue, to claim, to discuss, to debunk. And while you work to strengthen your authorial voice, you are scared shitless, particularly because we live in a troll society where we can't even say what we're thinking without thinking what could go wrong, who can jump to claim they know more, they know better, know the last right, the last dispute, the last peachy counterpunch. My friend, creative writer Raquel Gutierrez once said, there's Beyonce studies, and then there's critical Beyonce studies. So it was strange when I felt, okay, this is not mine anymore. I did it, but I also did it with and for others. And now others will own it. They will rewrite it as they read it and create new things. The active reader, the dead author, a multiplying scene, as Argentine playwright and psychodrama theorist Tato Pavlovsky used to say. I was melting in a sea of plurality, and then the thick envelope arrived, and it had my name. The utopia of unboundedness was suddenly vanished. The envelope was directed to Marcela Fuentes. I was the addressee, and that is why it had reached me at my home address. I'd have to respond, to act accordingly. Back to the previous slot in the board game. As I brought the envelope upstairs, I kept thinking about the person who cut and placed the adhesive tape to safeguard the letter, a border separating those delivering hands and the UC's office and me. A thick, sticky tape that bound us together. Did that person know what the letter said? How many letters did they handle that day? How many approvals? How many rejections? Was the officer that interviewed me the person that put together the mail? Who placed the envelope in the outgoing tray? Who got it ready for pickup? Did she use one of those tape dispensers that include a cutter? Or did she use her own teeth to cut the tape? Fingers, printer, envelope, tape, never saliva. Or was it the signatory, the one who knows the performance better, who probably was sitting in a bigger room reviewing the memo of the day? I look at the envelope and catch myself thinking about all these things. It's almost obscene to be entertained with such details. But hey, everyone is entitled to their own way of processing pain. Lesbian processing. I engaged the letter aesthetically, and both the tape and my investment in it, and at the juncture between full bureaucracy and accountability, make me imagine a performance, my own cut procedure. I excise the everyday. is this an everyday? And so I'll have to appeal, that is to file a motion to reopen and reconsider the denial.